What's the best podcast hosting site? For beginners especially, you're going to want something super simple to use, and these options in this video definitely fit the bill. The first option is absolutely free to use, and it is Spotify for podcasters. Hey, it's Spotify. It's the #1 podcast platform. There are 32.5 million American podcast listeners on Spotify, having surpassed Apple, which now has just 28.5 million podcast listeners. So if you're going to publish a podcast, why not do it on the king of podcasting sites? Spotify for Podcasters offers a number of tools to help you with the creation of your show, and it also has a number of tools to help you grow and monetize your show by helping you get engagement from your listeners. Something to note is Spotify for Podcasters supports video podcasting now, so if you intend to graduate from audio podcasting to video at some point in the future, or if you're just going to start out with a video podcast, Spotify for Podcasters is a great place for you to start. And like most major podcast hosting sites, Spotify for Podcasters allows you to distribute your show to all the major podcast listening platforms like Spotify, obviously, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, and more. One thing Spotify for Podcasters doesn't have, though, is a website generator. And if you're new and you want to grow your podcast and you don't know anything about generating or building a website, it may be worth looking at a hosting platform that does have that feature. So, number 2 is a paid platform, but it's well worth it because it does have a website generator. It's called Transistor.fm. Now, I've got links to these in the description below, and for Transistor.fm, there is a 14-day free trial. Like Spotify for Podcasting, you can publish your show just about anywhere on all the major platforms, and you can host multiple podcasts on a single account. But here's that feature that really makes it worth paying a little bit to host your podcast. It will automatically generate a website for your show, so you do get that additional reach and that credibility that comes with having your own podcast show website. Spotify for Podcasters has a number of analytics you can look at, as does Transistor.fm. There's a bit more detail in the Transistor.fm analytics, but it really depends on what you need, and if you do want more details, then that's again going to be worth paying a little bit for having this platform. And last but not least is this very platform you're watching this video on. YouTube has invested heavily in getting into the podcasting game, and so you can now host your podcast on YouTube. To do that, you're just going to go into your YouTube studio on this right-hand menu, and up here on the top right, you'll click the Create button, and on the bottom of that menu, you'll see the option for a new podcast. And just like everything else on YouTube, it's free to use. Is it the best place for your podcast? Well, it's hard to say. Listeners, I wouldn't say, are jumping to YouTube to find podcasts yet. I think the more traditional platforms like Spotify or Apple are still the places that are the default go-tos for podcasts. But YouTube, as I say, has invested heavily into podcasting, so they really are going to try to compete for a piece of that pie. So, you never know. It might well be worth uploading your show on Spotify for Podcasters or Transistor.fm and YouTube. If you're a new or aspiring podcaster and you're trying to figure this thing out, you cannot go wrong with these options. And quite honestly, it's much better to keep your focus on getting your show done and out there for your audience to listen to, regardless of the platform you choose. So pick one and get started. All the best.